Thanks for tuning in to more Jets coverage on Jets FM on EOFN, our lads, NFL depth charts as we go inside the New York Jets and their new additions from the 3 days of the NFL draft and fourth day in signing college undrafted free agents, which have already started. We're going to get into all of that in our condensed version. Today, we're going to do a more detailed, in-depth version later on this week. But Jan Levine and I wanted to get this up there as quick as possible. The signings are starting to flood in. We haven't been able to confirm some of these signings, but we will let you know about what we have heard so far. Sometimes you hear signings and then the next day they change. So we're going to say they're unofficial college undrafted signings as of now, but we'll fill you in with all that in a few minutes. First of all, it's the draft. Jan Levine, what'd you think about the New York Jets 2021 draft?
Well, first of all, let's start by saying that rating a draft now, we all know is kind of a fallacy because you don't know really what it's going to be for a couple of years down the road. But that said,
grades are silly.
A couple things. First of all, I'd say tale of two drafts is probably the best way to refer to it. The first half was offense, and more offense. And the second half was defense, and more defense, which is kind of where they went, right? The first 4 picks were offense. And then afterwards, they ended up going on the defensive side of the ball, especially focused on cornerback, linebacker, or a hybrid thereof. It seemed to be the Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh strategy of getting guys who maybe can play kind of multiple positions is the best way to refer to it. We knew going in they needed a couple of needs. I think they kind of addressed some of those needs, though there's still some additional ones, which is where I thought maybe they might try to go for another offensive lineman later on in the draft, and we'll probably get into that a little bit, just because obviously the left side of the line is fine. Center is probably okay. When you get to the right side of the line, it's kind of meh at best, and that's kind of going to be a work in progress. And we'll probably get a little bit into there's a couple of moves now, given who they given who they drafted, that you could start seeing some potential cuts and some other guys who are out there as free agents that we think they may end up going for based upon filling some needs.
All right. Well, let's first of all, I tell you what. Let's go by position, and we're not going to get into Zach Wilson right now. We'll do that when we have a lot more time to talk. Let's go into running back, and the Jets. We thought this was possible, that they were either going to go after the star running back, or based on what we saw from San Francisco and LaFleur's previous stints where he was coaching, that they were going to go running back by committee. And it's obvious that this is a running back by committee offense. Michael Carter was the lone pickup in the backfield. We haven't seen anybody as far as undrafted rookies yet. So it's Michael Carter, and that's okay because the Jets already have some good young running backs. P. Ryan, Ty Johnson looked good in some spurts. Josh Adams. They brought in Tevin Coleman, of course, the veteran who knows the system. And now you add Michael Carter, who is one of those guys. It's not an every down back, but he's got a lot of talent, and it's a guy that's going to be a big play kind of player in the backfield with good hands out of the backfield. Maybe more of a third down type early in his career. Maybe we'll see him and it was interesting that Leon Washington was the one that called his name, because maybe that's exactly what he's going to be, kind of like a Leon Washington type.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll get to it. The first of the 2 Michael Carters. And I think the time-space continuum got warped yesterday with a North Carolina and a Duke guy getting drafted kind of back-to-back. But, yeah, Carter is not necessarily a 3-down back kind of guy who's, as you mentioned, can be used in multiple different ways. Good hands, good speed. You look at his average yards per carry, pretty impressive last year. Guy that, fills into the mix, as you mentioned, the running back by committee, without them drafting a true bell cow back, which we talked about. They didn't go for Etienne, they didn't go for anybody of that ilk. Early on, we thought that the 4th, 5th round might be a round that they targeted, which is what they did. Grabbing him there, you mentioned Johnson, Coleman, P. Ryan, all these guys will kind of be in the mix, and LaFleur will mix and match to try to find the right matchups, using multiple guys to kind of fill the running back position.
And by the way, I'll be looking at this guide, the Ourlads 2021 Draft Guide. You can order it now at ourlads.com. This is the best time to order it, because now you can go in here, you can take a look at all the profiles of the Jet players. Matter of fact, I believe 8 out of the 10 profiles are in here, including, I believe, 3 of the undrafted signings so far that it looks like the Jets have added to their team. So 11 total players so far that you can check out their profiles here at ourlads.com. So there you go. Michael Carter added to the running back room. Now, the tight end room. We didn't think that there would be a move early. We thought, all right, maybe a little bit later if the right guy came along. Well, that didn't happen until the Jets signed Kenny Yeboah from Ole Miss. And Kenny Yeboah is a guy that if the Jets would have drafted him in the 4th round, that would have been normal because that was his grade. So you really have to like the fact that the Jets did not spend a draft pick on Kenny Yeboah. This kid has a ton of talent. You take a look at the fact that he was a Temple guy who transferred to Ole Miss in the SEC and averaged 19.4 yards per reception. So he had a big-time graduate season at Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin's big-time offense there. That included 27 receptions for 524 yards and 6 touchdowns. He also has a lot of experience as a blocker, but he's not very good as a blocker. So it's important, though, that he has experience. He knows that that's one of the parts that he's going to have to grade out better, and that's where coaching is going to come in. Probably a practice squad guy early on, but a player that has a lot of talent in the passing game. Could be a player to keep an eye on down the road.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, we talked last year. I mean, what this does do to a certain extent, we don't know yet. If he was impressive in camp, this could be something that Ryan Griffith could be in trouble. He had a very poor year last year after the big year 2 years ago. We talked about Daniel Brown not having a good year last year. Wesco proving to be maybe more of a blocking back. So what this does do is, if he pans out, Yeboah, it gives them some options there at the tight end position, especially now if they want to free up some cap room to try to fill some other spots that may cost them a bit more than expected.
All right, at wide receiver, Elijah Moore was the Jets' first pick in day 2. And again, not a huge need compared to cornerback, maybe offensive line, running back, and so forth, but definitely something where the Jets could have added a player if the right player fell to them, and that's exactly what happened. The Jets were getting calls left and right, but Joe Douglas was like, I can't do it. I mean, this guy, we had him rated as one of our top 20 players in the draft, and here he is sitting right there in the 2nd round for us at number 34, and you're talking about a 4-3 guy. Look, I watched the game, Mississippi State. I watched it. I watched the end of the game where he lifted his leg and cost the team the game. And you know what? I had Mississippi in the game, and I was pissed at him because he cost Mississippi the game. He cost me some money in the game. I remember what happened. I'm glad to hear, though, that he has at least said all the right things since then, that he's not that type of guy anymore. Obviously, the Jets aren't going to bring a guy like that into their locker room if they think he doesn't check out. I just think it was quite interesting that happened to him, but I'm glad to hear that it's something that's in his past.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked the question. He answered honestly and clearly and stated, look, that's not him, that he's learned from it, that he's learned lessons from it. Interesting also that Douglas was comfortable enough waiting and not trying to trade back up into the 1st round to go get him, waiting for him to come to him at 34. We thought there was a bunch of different options they could go with, right? JOK from Notre Dame was another one. There was a lot of other options, but more slot guy normally. But the most viewpoint seems to be that he definitely can play on the outside, has the ability to play out there. And what this does do, look, we all know there's yin and yang. It's a zero-sum game, right? This definitely puts your favorite receiver on a little bit of a hot seat if they decide to free up some salary to improve the cornerback. Mr. Crowder could be a little bit of risk making $10 million, right? That's it's right. A guy I thought they might trade him yesterday. I thought they may try to get like a 3rd or 4th round pick from him. Interesting that they didn't. I don't think they'll move on from him, but we're going to get to the cornerback. I'll give you a couple of ideas who I'm thinking of there. And one or two of them we've already mentioned. If you need a little cap room, there's definitely areas, including offensive line, where you can maybe make some moves now to free up some cap room. You may have a little dead cap space, but you'll have enough room to sign some guys that really bolster the defense to kind of improve things that are out there right now.
Yeah, what's good about Moore and Carter, by the way, is that they both will add a return game to the Jets. So that's also something to keep an eye on.
Speed, as you mentioned, speed, lots of speed.
Speed from Elijah Moore, no question about it. All right, also, the offensive line, only one player. Remember, we were talking about this, and I stressed as much as possible that this wasn't. Don't be surprised if the Jets do not target the offensive line that much or that early. They did the opposite of what I thought, but kind of the same. So I thought they would have a little bit more. They would add maybe 2 or 3 players, but later, in other words, they would go more quantity. They decided, nope, we're going to go quality. And that's what they did with Elijah Vera Tucker. And there are a few people, obviously, including Joe Douglas, who believes that this is a premium offensive lineman. So all it takes is one general manager. There's other guys who think he's, bottom of the first round kind of guy. Only it takes one guy. Joe Douglas is our general manager. He loves him. And that is the lone offensive lineman that was drafted. They signed, this is, again, unofficial, Grant Hermans, a 7th-round grade from Purdue. He's an offensive tackle. That's it so far for the offensive line, keeping in mind that Joe Douglas spent a lot of time on the offensive line last year in free agency. He's got some of these guys, as we mentioned, contract-wise, that should deserve one more year, and that's apparently what he's going to give them.
Yep, give me 1 second. I'm just going to close my door. Sorry.
Okay. So keep in mind, again, that one of the things that you mentioned was salary cap, and that's where another player comes in mind. And I would guess that's Lewis.
Absolutely. Alex, I think there's a little bit of a risk. Look, Vera Tucker, you and I are both ecstatic at that pick. I think it's been centrally welcomed in terms of the pick. What I would have liked later on is we talked about this, risk reward, right? Trey Smith had a 1st or 2nd round grade dealing with the blood clots. You don't know whether or not he's going to play given the number of 6th round picks that the team had. That's the guy I was kind of hoping they may try to draft late. Kansas City took him. Look, nobody knows if he's going to be healthy enough to play, but he's the kind of guy that he's got the tremendous amount of upside where I thought that taking the risk reward, especially with the number of picks they had there, made a lot of sense. Shane Lancelot was another guy who I might have wanted late to bolster, but what this does mean is maybe they're satisfied and maybe they liked a lot what they saw with Clark last year on the practice squad.
True.
Maybe they think he's going to have an opportunity to play.
Don't forget they signed the guy from the Chargers with all that experience.
Yeah, he's depth, right?
Yeah.
So McGovern will be the starting center. Fant is going to probably be on the right side, and then who knows? And again, maybe there's guys who will open up in free agency, right? This is what not in free agency, but players getting cut. We look at Trent Williams last year, didn't get signed, wanted to move, ended up going to San Francisco. Jets could be in the mix, especially if they free up some cap room, right? You look at Lewis making $6.9 million. You look at Crowder making $10 million. There are other needs, but they do have the ability to had a little bit of cap room remaining. They have the ability to free up some additional cap room if they decide to want to make some moves on a couple different positions. One being offensive line. The other one, which we'll get to, is in the defensive backfield.
All right, let's go on defense and tell you what. Let's start with the defensive backfield because it took a while until round 5 with pick 10, 154 for Michael Carter to be the first cornerback chosen. Then the Jets decided in 3 of their last 4 picks they were going to go corner. Michael Carter, Jason Pinnock from Pitt, and Brendan Eccles from Kentucky. So we'll go with those guys first. And this is what's interesting, and we talked about this. They're so young in the defensive backfield already. They have just added more young guys that more than likely, maybe one of these guys can make the team. A couple of other guys are going to end up on the practice squad. They have a bunch of young guys already still on the team. We've talked about that for the past month. They got to bring in a veteran. They have got to. And I'm not just talking about Poole. They got to bring in Poole and they got to bring in a veteran. So I don't think the work is done yet at corner, but it's nice to see that they have a ton of young, fresh faces in the secondary to work with.
Yeah. Look, hopefully one of the 3 pan out. I mean, I think Michael Carter is probably the one that maybe a bit outside. Pinnock is a guy in Pittsburgh who didn't create out. Eccles we don't know about, but you mentioned, right? We've talked Poole a lot, slot corner. Now we said Crowder's at risk, Lewis is at risk. Either one of them goes, right? You can use that cap saving, and Mr. Steven Nelson is sitting there, and a Mr. Richard Sherman is sitting there. Either one of them would be a fine addition to the defensive backfield. Either one of those guys could step in as a starter and allow the young guys still time to grow and mature. But those are I would not be shocked if they get one of those 2 guys and maybe Poole also to really bolster the defensive backfield.
All right, and then at safety, even though both these players are going to more play hybrid linebacker roles, where Sherwood from Auburn in round 5 and Najrul Dean, the Florida State kid, in round 6. But both of them, from where the Jets were able to get them, both of them seemed to grade out really well. I think these are the perfect type of players for Robert Saleh's defense.
Yeah, it's going to be the Swiss Army type system, right? You're going to plug guys in and out, linebacker, cornerback, safety. Maybe he'll mix and match the line. I really like Nazdeen a lot, like Sherwin a lot, but I like Nazdeen was the one that really stood out to me in terms of a draft pick guy who I thought could have gone a lot earlier.
Yep.
Was projected to go a lot earlier than went. Definitely hasn't a lot. Yep. So that's at that point in time, based upon if you agree with the grades that were given to them, taking them where they took them is a major upside for the Jets potentially.
All right, and then up front we go to the defensive line where the Jets added their last draft pick, Jonathan Marshall, the defensive tackle from Arkansas. That's a guy that we would expect with the depth that the Jets have. He'll be a practice squad guy early in his career, more than likely. And they also added Michael Dwumfor, a college free agent signing from Rutgers, who had a pretty nice season last season for Rutgers. But also, let's keep in mind, and I want to add another guy that we kind of passed up on, was the kid Rashed Hamaclair from Oregon State. He's a linebacker. The word is that the Jets have signed him as a college free agent, and this is a kid that did not have a very big 2020 season, but he was extremely productive in 2019. He's a 4th-round grade. He led the nation in 2019 with 22 and a half tackles for loss. He had a team record 14 and a half sacks. And he is a guy that just needs more technique work. And he's got, again, he goes to the right staff. If he can fine-tune his techniques, the Jets might have themselves a steal with this kid from Oregon State. But again, that's it as far as the defense is concerned. And we're not surprised that Marshall was the only defensive lineman they have so far either drafted or signed.
Yeah, I mean, Rashad is the kind of kid we talk about upside. We looked for a pass rusher. They didn't necessarily address it during the draft, but they got a kid who's got the potential to maybe become one of those guys they can use as a situational pass rusher, especially on the outside at linebacker. We know that 2 of the spots are set already, right? You have Mosley already set. You have Davis already set. The third guy is kind of up in the air right now. He's kind of kid who can come in and with a good camp, he'll get an opportunity. And he's, as you mentioned, he's definitely with the right squad in order to potentially improve his technique, given the talent, especially Saleh, how he coaches guys up and maximizes their talent.
I want to remind everybody that I am going to put together a more in-depth look at all of these players. We're going to take excerpts from the draft guide. We'll take a look at their stats. I'll get all sorts of analysis and break everything down. Obviously, you're going to give me some time because there's going to be a lot of work put into this. But give me, who knows, a few days, a week or so. But we're going to put together a really kick-ass, in-depth look at all of the Jets' draft picks and key free agent signings. And I said, all of these guys that I've mentioned are kind of unofficial because sometimes you hear they're going there and then the next day, what happened? No, they're going somewhere else. But so far, the top 2 players are the kid Rashid and the linebacker from Oregon State and the tight end Yeboah from Ole Miss. Otherwise, I think it was a very successful draft, Jan. I think there was a lot of positive talk around ESPN regarding how the Jets drafted, how they went about the strategy of the draft. You can't fill everything in one draft and one offseason, but they're off to a really good start.
Yeah, I mean, I think the viewpoint was 3 guys in the top 20 or so of talent-wise, including Carter, 4 guys probably top 65, considering especially where they drafted Carter. Later on, they took some flyers. Like I said, the only thing I would have loved, Trey Smith, to me, would have made the draft a steal. Don't know whether or not he would have panned out. Kind of guy with upside. And the other thing I think they may look for is, don't be surprised, we talked about a couple of kickers.
Right.
Kicker went in the 4th round, the one you liked, so the Jets obviously didn't take him there. But
no, that was McPherson. The Bora Gallis kid is still available.
Right. So don't be surprised the Jets make a move to try to get him. I mean, you were very high on him initially, thought if they went for a kicker, especially 6th round, he could be the guy they go for. You know what? There's clearly a crying need if he wants to come in with a true opportunity to make a roster.
This is one of them.
Jets roster is one of those where he has that opportunity. So.
And keep an eye on Drew Chrisman. I'm a big Drew Chrisman fan. He's the punter from Ohio State. Loved him ever since I first saw him when he was a freshman. I think it would be a good idea to sign a guy like that and give Braden Mann a little bit of, competition in camp.
So the other thing I think we're going to see is who they bring in as a veteran backup, right? I know Nick Foles' name has got mentioned a lot because he's not making a ton of money. Would be a guy who would be a good pairing maybe with Wilson to give him a decent veteran backup in case they need one. But they'll be kind of scouring the market now to find a veteran backup.
Just keep in mind, you bring in a veteran backup, that's, once again, the Jets will carry 3 quarterbacks.
Yep.
And that's not ideal, but that's what they're going to do. Because they're not going to dump Morgan in the second year.
No, not a year in. Not a year in, not necessarily.
Not going to do that. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. All right, Jan. So we'll talk more. We'll have an opportunity to do this a little bit more in depth sometime over the next week or so. But like I mentioned, I just wanted to get this out there. It's Sunday morning. Lots of signings are still happening. There's still a lot of players that haven't been signed. So there's still a lot of action to talk about when we do this again sometime in the next week.
Sounds good.